Sometimes just one thought is enough to completely change the course of our lives. And the curious thing is that we almost never realize when this happens. Who hasn't found themselves thinking, if I had accepted that invitation? Or, if I had said no, everything would be different? Yes, a small detail can change the outcome of an entire story. And what makes this change is not fate, but choice that is born inside our mind. What makes this even more fascinating is that life often doesn't give us any advance warning. A simple temptation appears disguised as an opportunity, and voila! Your heart races, logic vanishes, and you think you're looking at the winning ticket. But is that really true? How many people have traded years of honesty on a moment of impulse? It's like abandoning an entire plantation because of a single shiny fruit that appears in the path. And then comes the part that no one likes to face. All choice has a consequence sooner or later. The thing is, consequences never come alone. They usually bring a lesson with them. Sometimes they come sweet, other times bitter like coffee without sugar. But they come. And that's precisely where the question that will guide this entire reflection lies. Have you ever imagined how your life could change just because of a single thought got out of your control? Jake was one of those young men who faced hardships. From an early age, he learned that nothing comes for free and that sweat is the only investment that truly pays off. He worked from dawn to dusk and still barely had enough to survive. But amidst such scarcity, there was one thing he never lacked. Honesty. He may not have had coins in his pocket, but he had firm principles in his heart. It was easy to look at him and see the hardness etched on his face, as if each premature wrinkle were a scar from the battles of everyday life. While others sought shortcuts, Jake believed that each thought shaped his future, even if it was one filled with uncertainty. Many mocked his simplicity, but he remained steadfast, preferring to sleep peacefully rather than carry hidden guilt. After all, anyone who has experienced the peace of a clear conscience knows its value. This vulnerability, curiously, was what aroused the most empathy. Who hasn't experienced a moment when the fridge was almost empty, but dignity still needed to be maintained? Jake was the embodiment of this. He showed that even in the face of temptation, choosing the easiest way, I opted for the hard path, accepting the possible consequences, and it was precisely at this point that life decided to test him in a way he could never have imagined. As he walked along the dusty road, Jake spotted a hunched-over old man trying to lift a heavy bronze sack. Anyone could have ignored him and moved on. After all, no one likes to carry someone else's burden. But Jake, without a second thought, approached and offered help. It wasn't wealth that prompted that gesture, but a simple reflection of his own honesty. Do what is right even when no one is looking. The old man accepted the help, but his eyes watched him closely. It was as if Jake's every move were being weighed on an invisible scale. This was more than just a bag of brass. It was a silent test, a chance to reveal character. And Jake, without realizing it, was showing that his thought was not guided by temptation of easy gain, but for the purity of choice sincere to serve. As they climbed the small hill together, the old man smiled from the corner of his eye, as if he knew something the other didn't yet suspect. Jake didn't realize it, but that simple act of kindness had already begun to write a larger chapter in his story. And yet, as happens in all of our lives, that was only the first step on a long path of trials. What came next would require much more than strength of arms. It would require steadfastness of heart. When they reached the riverbank, the old man placed a bag of silver before Jake. The gleam of the coins reflected off the water, almost mesmerizing. To anyone living in poverty, this sounded like the answer to all their problems. But Jake took a deep breath and remembered that not every opportunity is a blessing. Some are just temptation disguised. He knew that accepting something without deserving it could cost him dearly in the future. With firm steps, Jake crossed the river, carrying the weight of the sack, but without letting the shine of the coins weigh him down. Every drop that splashed onto his clothes seemed to remind him of the importance of honesty, even when no one else was there to judge him. It was as if the current tested not only his physical strength, but the invisible strength of his convictions. After all, true wealth lies not in what one holds in one's hands, but in what one holds in one's heart. The old man once again watched in silence. He offered no praise nor criticism, just that enigmatic look as if gauging a man's soul. Jake, without realizing it, was proving that his choice was guided by principles, not by immediate desires. The river was behind us, but the path ahead still held new challenges. And each challenge would come with consequences even bigger. The climb up the hill seemed endless, every loose stone beneath Jake's feet a reminder of how thankless life's path can be. Halfway up the trail, the old man placed before him a gleaming bag of gold. The weight was different, but what weighed most heavily was the responsibility of that vision. Gold has always been the ultimate symbol of temptation, the kind of brilliance that has toppled empires and corrupted kings. Jake took a deep breath, remembering something from his past. He had once quit a job because they asked him to lie on a simple report. "No one will find out," they said. But Jake knew that lying is like a crack in a dam. It starts small but soon destroys everything. It was this memory that rekindled within him the power of honesty. Gold could buy comfort, but it would not buy peace. And peace, he had already learned, is a currency too rare to be exchanged. The old man once again remained silent, simply watching. It was as if he were waiting to see if Jake would uphold his own convictions or yield to this final test. At stake here was not just a bag of gold, but the unseen value of choices that determine the course of life. The hill was not yet finished, and the greatest consequence of all was about to reveal itself. The climb up the hill seemed endless, every loose stone beneath Jake's feet a reminder of how thankless life's path can be. Halfway up the trail, the old man placed before him a gleaming bag of gold. The weight was different, but what weighed most heavily was the responsibility of that vision. Gold has always been the ultimate symbol of temptation, the kind of brilliance that has toppled empires and corrupted kings. Jake took a deep breath, remembering something from his past. He had once quit a job because they asked him to lie on a simple report. "No one will find out," they said. But Jake knew that lying is like a crack in a dam. It starts small but soon destroys everything. It was this memory that rekindled within him the power of honesty. Gold could buy comfort, but it would not buy peace. And peace, he had already learned, is a currency too rare to be exchanged. The old man once again remained silent, simply watching. It was as if he were waiting to see if Jake would uphold his own convictions or yield to this final test. At stake here was not just a bag of gold, but the unseen value of choices that determine the course of life. The hill was not yet finished, and the greatest consequence of all was about to reveal itself. As the bag of gold swayed in his hands, Jake felt something different, a whisper inside his own mind. "I'm young, I still have time to rebuild my life. This gold can change everything." For the first time, the thought of abandoned honesty that had always guided him gained ground. It was as if the hill was made not only of stones but also of doubts. Looking at the old man, tired and frail, brought another dangerous line of reasoning. "He no longer has a future. Perhaps gold serves me better than him." This kind of justification is the most common trap of temptation. Turn selfishness into acceptable logic. Jake knew this, but the inner voice seemed louder than ever. His heart raced as if each beat were a push toward falling. It was the first crack in a wall built over years of right choices. And we all know, all it takes is one crack for the water to find a way in and break everything. Jake felt he was on the edge, on a razor's edge between choice correct and the most painful of consequences. Little did he know that that split second would define not only his future, but also reveal the old man's true intentions. With a slap, Jake gave in. Without looking back, he grabbed the bags and sprinted down the hill, his heart pounding like a wild drum. The initial feeling was one of victory. Finally, after so much suffering, it seemed as if life had given him a prize. But each step carried not only the weight of gold and silver, but the invisible burden of having abandoned his honesty in exchange for a temptation/passenger. When he stopped to open the bags, the shock was overwhelming. There were no coins, no wealth, just ordinary stones not worth a single loaf of bread. Disappointment was accompanied by a heavy silence, as if the universe itself were watching him in disapproval. It was at that moment that Jake realized the true consequence of your choice. It was not about losing the gold, but about losing oneself. Among the stones, he found a yellowed piece of paper. The letter revealed, the old man was in fact the king, disguised to search for someone worthy of inheriting his throne. What seemed like a mere chance encounter was actually the greatest opportunity of his life. But a single thought wrong had destroyed years of integrity. And that revelation weighed far more than any bag of gold could weigh. Jake understood, too late, that a lifetime of honesty collapsed before a single thought was poorly cultivated. It's like building a solid house for years and, in a moment of carelessness, setting the roof on fire. The tragedy lies not only in the material loss, but in the regret of having given up what has always been your greatest asset, your character. One wrong decision can become a burden that stays with you forever. Just like seeds thrown into the earth, our thoughts also germinate. If we plant faith, discipline, and righteousness, we reap peace and respect. But if we give in to temptation and we cultivate excuses, what springs forth is regret and frustration. Jake saw the hard way that each choice brings with it an inevitable harvest. Fate neither punishes nor rewards, it only returns what we choose to sow. And perhaps this is the greatest warning. Life always tests us before delivering great rewards. It's not about a king in disguise, but about the daily situations in which we can betray or honor our own values. The big question is, when the next test comes, will you choose integrity or surrender to consequence bitter from a passing temptation? Because deep down, every future is born from a single thought. Ultimately, life always shows us that true wealth isn't found in safes or coins, but in living with peace of mind. Honesty, it may not seem like the quickest way, but it's the only one that guarantees peaceful nights and fear-free days. And if we stop to think about it, nothing is worth more than laying your head on the pillow knowing that no temptation by your conscience. Now, here's a direct question for you. Which thoughts have guided their last choices? Have you been planting seeds of integrity or allowing small shortcuts to compromise your future harvest? Remember, every decision, no matter how small, brings consequences, and perhaps the difference between living a full life or one filled with regrets lies precisely in that moment when you decide who you will be. So, if this story has brought you value, don't keep it to yourself. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, and subscribe to the channel to continue learning about the power of choices. Turn on notifications and join me on this journey. Because in the end, what matters most is not allowing a single wrong thought to steal the future you deserve.